Welcome to the LiveO2 podcast.
Sometimes you've got to do what's right for you and not do what's right for everybody else.
Then you have to take the steps to manage your health.
We're here to help you learn how to better live your day. Live your day.
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the LiveO2 for the People podcast. I'm excited to have again with us Engineer Mike today, and we are going to be talking all things masks. So we recently released our newest mask option, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I know a lot of you, when comparing our systems, maybe have been asking yourself, how does the LiveO2 mask compare to different systems or different masks? Well, this is the start to that question. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Mike, can you bring us up to date on what you have been working on?
Sure, Jen, I can do that, no problem. As you know, LiveO2 is the industry innovator in oxygen multi-step training, or commonly known as EWAT, and I think we're kind of past those terms, but I don't know the exact real term. The adaptive contrast, brings such a new light to EWAT that it's hard for me to say EWAT and adaptive contrast in the same breath. But anyway, we've been real busy working on our new mask and a valve system. I'm proud to announce that it's been released, and that's great. It's the start of the system, and it's also a pretty intimate part of the system. And I'm really excited to be making this release and excited about what we've done to engineer this next piece of the ultimate system.
Yeah, I think I know I am. We often we get a chance to talk about a lot of things. Wouldn't it be great if? And this is one that's been a little bit longer coming, but I'm really excited about this too. Comfort is a huge part of using any system that has a mask. First and foremost, LiveO2 has to have the participant. It's got to be used by a participant, and if we can make them feel comfortable, we're taking out a big obstruction from them using the system. And this mask is going to eliminate basically what I feel like are any comfort issues. And in terms of a mask kit, with a valve, this is as deluxe as it gets.
Yeah, the photo at least looks very deluxe. I haven't seen one in person yet, but it looks a lot different than our standard mask. And if you guys listened to our previous episode with Mike, we got into all of the nuances behind the designs of our valves. It's such a big part of the LiveO2 experience, like Tom said, the comfort piece, but Mike can also talk about how that actually affects your training. So let's talk about the feature set that you built into this new mask. Absolutely,
Jenna. We call it the ultimate mask because, we had to build it. And if we're going to build it, we want to build it to that next level. And the mask body, it's made of silicone, which is very durable. It's made to last, and it's just the best choice of materials. One of the reasons is it's virtually non-reactive. We consulted with a few mask manufacturers and tested, and we picked the best one that we could find. It's called the non-rebreather training mask. And it's just the latest design for oral nasal use. I got to say that right, which basically just means you breathe it, your nose or your mouth. There's a huge proponent that I believe, and that you benefit from breathing through your nose. And maybe one day we'll talk about that here as well. But the mask is just critical. It's just a critical component. This is what the mask that we chose. It's used in clinical studies to evaluate metabolic function. It's used in the clinical testing environment, and it's an extremely durable mask. It's not going to warp, lose shape, wear out, other things like that. So.
Yeah, and I got to point out, silicone is the coolest material ever. In terms of a mask, this is comfort, and it fits down under your chin, and it'll fit right on the bridge of your nose. And the strap system really does a good job of holding it in place. A lot of where we have been with our mask is we went with the lightest weight because we are exercising. And what we've been able to do with this new mask and a really great strap system is, what we lost in having a little bit heavier mask is gained in so much more function. But, back to the idea of silicone being almost the most inert thing you can come up with in terms of working with gas concentrations, not being reactive to sweat and oils, really not reactive with much of anything for that matter. It's a good place for me to mention it's why LiveO2 for at least the past 4 years has been using all of our flexible hoses are silicone. And we like that because it doesn't react with oxygen. It's very clean. And just so our listeners know, when you have a clear flexible hose, it's almost always going to be a vinyl chloride substrate as the base for it. And while these things are approved for food contact, it's a much different environment when you start running oxygen through it. Typically, your food, beverages, and solid food products, they don't have a whole lot of oxygen in them, so it's not really what those hoses are rated for. I clearly know I'm on my Mr. Clean soapbox, but safe for food contact is not the same thing as safe for oxygen containment or transport. And I have to put that out there just so we can say, okay, that settles that. Mike, I'll let you get back to it. I know there's a lot more to talk about with this premium mask.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. Thanks for backing me up on that, Tom. For the ultimate mask kit, we custom engineered our breathing valve. That's exciting because it does. We're able to do many things with that and implementing our own design. It securely adapts to the mask body, and it can also connect to a variety of different size hoses. The big thing here is that we wanted to maintain a 26 millimeter spec, built inside the entire circuit. It's designed with that consistent 26 millimeter diameter or inner diameter, from the valve through the mask. And the next to that, is the materials and the comfort issue, and the consistency of the breathing circuit inner diameter is one of the most important engineering specifications that we considered, when designing the circuit. Like we talked about the other day or last time, it's just got to be functional through the mask and through the valve and through the system. And in this ultimate valve and the mask pairing, it's just the first step in what we call a neutral breathing circuit. That's what we have trademarked as well. The scenario that we repeatedly see in these high volume training masks is that, they're paired with a reducing connector followed by a low volume valve. The valves are designed for, continuous airway pressure, which is the CPAP systems. And they're just not engineered, to support the breathing levels that, we're going to see being used in our system. And these CPAP valves, they're designed for positive airflow when someone is sleeping. And it's just not intended for the purpose that we're using them. And, these are just poor thought out mask and valve mix-match circuits that, it's an expensive option, creates resistance in the system. They're just not intended, like I said, for the flow rates that we're typically seeing in our system.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of questions in our Facebook community around CPAP. So what you just explained, Mike, sounds very critical to the function of our system. Tom, do you have anything to add on to that?
When we go back to this, we're going from, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think a 19 millimeter inner diameter to a 26.
Yeah.
And
yes.
This is, to me, it looks really larger than our normal airway would be, which is actually probably where we want to be. But this is the number one most super important extra special rule that we have to follow in breathing circuits, is that your flow rate has to be able to match the participant's needs during the session. And one of the big reasons we went from 19 to 26 is we now have a new breed of individual that's getting on the system. And they're a lot stronger breathers, and they're changing a lot more air. It was one of the considerations for releasing the dual system, where we went from about a 700 liter reservoir to in excess of 1,200 liters. That, it runs a lot more like a 1,400 liter based on the the pressure that the valve inside the reservoir, the switch mechanism inside the reservoir will hold. So it's always this delicate line of, not compromising part of the system and failing to deliver the capacity that someone needs to get during their session. We want them to have effective results. So the mask valve becomes the most critical part of that circuit. And I'm really happy that we went ahead and said, let's start entertaining this next level of strong breathers. Give them 26 millimeters as a start. And we're going to do some interesting things with that 26 millimeters that we're not ready to start talking about yet. But, for us, it's not okay to have an underrated valve or add positive pressure to overcome poor design. That simply, Mike, I'll let you say it, but it's not well thought of.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to live that one down. So, yeah, it was important. It's important to know flow dynamics, and how you can have a high volume mask that is completely compromised by a valve that isn't designed for a high volume. That low volume valve dictates how actually how poorly, the system's going to work.
So I think this is maybe one of Mike's terms from our last episode, but I think that's what you might call stinking thinking. And I wasn't sure if that was an OP term or just a Mike term, but I'm adopting it into my personal vocabulary. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't know why that term ever got out of favor, but I still love it.
Bring it back.
Yeah, our purpose actually started, when thinking about the circuit, is building the valve. When you look at the market and what's available, the valve is critical, and there's not a lot out there. And then what you do find just didn't seem right. So anyway, it was really good. We started working on the valve. I mean, that's it. We started there. We started with the valve.
Yeah, and the idea with building the valve, this is a huge deal. It's the first time we've been able to move away from a one-piece mask body / valve, which, this mask will always be around for us. And I'm sure we'll have some customers that, are always going to want it and demand it. So, if you're in that group, don't worry about it. It'll always be around. We'll probably still use that mask at events. But by building the valve, and when you see this mask kit, you'll realize that it's, there are components to it. There's the inner mask body, there's an adapter, there's the valve itself, and we can connect to just about any hose that we need to. But we eliminated the limitation of having the valve on the actual mask. And I think that's going to make things a lot different for us in terms of this inner diameter spec that we want to support.
Cool. So now that we've kind of gone over the actual mask kit, the valve design, let's talk about the straps. So I know that for our standard mask, we have 2 strap options, the neoprene and the silicone. I feel like most people use the neoprene. I'm not sure if you guys have any actual data on that, but what can we expect with the premium mask? Is it different?
Yeah, once again, we've considered all the options, and we chose what I consider, a top of the line mask. So we did our research, and we found what we believe is going to be a top of the line strap option as well. It's a five-way strap. It's easily adjustable. It's lightweight. It's designed for comfort while exercising, and it's a little bit heavier, mask and valve option. So it's going to be able to support that well. When you attach the valve, all that being integrated and all, I think it's the best system, that we could put together. I do need to say, it's going to take a little bit of time to adjust the strap and get it perfect, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. You just have to play around with it and get it to where it fits proper, holds everything, and then once you got it where you think it's fitting perfect, and you start exercising and you get into your fast pace or whatever, and you start moving around a little bit, you'll be adjusting it, second, third, fourth session sometimes. But it's a great system that's going to work perfect for 99.9% of the people.
Good. Yeah, and I know that fit has been a very popular topic amongst our users. But additionally, another topic that has come up quite a bit recently is cleaning. So I think that this has been maybe our second most popular topic recently, and we've talked a lot internally about it. Because we have different folks saying, you know, do I need to sanitize these in a cabinet? Do I need to use ozone? Can we just use simple soap and water? And I know, Tom, we've addressed this for the standard mask kit on, I believe it was our first Q&A episode, and I can link up to that if you guys are curious to check that out. But Tom, what can you say about cleaning the premium mask?
Yeah, this is a good topic. Short of it, no matter what mask you're using, what type of system you're using between standard and adaptive contrast, you still got to wash your mask. You know, think of it as a dinner plate. You're going to wash that plate before you eat off it again. And I've seen some masks that have gone from, you know, new to pretty gross just because they haven't been washed, and that's happened in a matter of weeks. This process, if you're using our old original mask or our new one, it starts with warm soapy water. I like Dawn. They're in my opinion best at getting off the oils. If you don't get off the oils, you're technically not sanitizing your mask. You know, you maybe can get a surface sanitation, but as soon as you touch those oils, you've got something different going on in your surface reactivities. So there's really no way around basic hygiene. You got to remove the physical barriers to getting the actual mask component clean. You know, so that's always going to be the first step. You got to get that film off of there. And then with our premium mask body, what I recommend is disinfection with a soaking solution. That's the easiest. You know, any acceptable decontamination method in lieu of some of the heavy chemical agents and autoclave. You know, you just have to first wash your mask with warm soapy water and then rinse it with clean water. I like a 1 part white distilled vinegar. That's distilled vinegar, so it's white, and you buy it for like 99 cents at the grocery store for a gallon. If you just let your mask and valve soak for about 5 minutes in that, the acetic acid will take care of most anything that's going to be out there. I like the white distilled vinegar because it washes off really easily, and it's cheap. You can buy commercial citrus cleaners and, you know, chemical agents, but, you know, I kind of think our world is already full enough of chemicals that maybe we don't want to introduce them in a way that residuals is either going to be on our face or on our mask. Now, the next step that you can get into, UV light is very effective at sanitation. So once you go through the warm soapy water, you could go to a UV light cabinet. We've evaluated some of those. They're very effective. They're inexpensive. And the key is they won't damage the materials that are in the mask kit and the valve. And we can put a link up to some of those if you feel like it's something you want to invest in. They're in the neighborhood of $50. If you're a high throughput facility, you can get one that has a couple drawers in it. And basically you know, when your masks have been in there for 5 minutes, that they're going to be as clean as it gets. Sterilization is tough to get to, but disinfected would be the proper term there. And, you know, I should mention, it's important to realize that now that we're in a modular mask, is you also want to be washing the valve. And this should be easy. The valve doesn't have direct contact, but it does have direct contact with your breath. So the valve has to be washed too. And, you know, all of this takes less than 2 minutes. In my opinion, it's simple just to go to that white distilled vinegar and water solution, and that's going to cost you less than $1 a gallon.
Yeah, I am totally on the vinegar train. I recently switched to that after becoming a new mom, and it's great. I clean everything with vinegar. So in this instance, I think it would apply the same and super safe. But one thing where I'm a little bit confused, Tom, I'm not very versed in ozone as a cleaner. So I know ozone as like part of our atmosphere. You know, you might see what's the space guy Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about it. But I'm not super familiar on how that translates to cleaning. And again, I haven't been in that scenario before, and I would go for something like distilled vinegar. But I know that we do have people asking who are maybe launching sites or, you know, training multiple people that have been talking about using ozone. Can you talk to us about just what that even means to use that as a cleaner?
Yeah, ozone. I mean, in some cases, it's a great disinfectant, to make sure you have a level of disinfection with unreactive materials. And you know where we hear ozone is, yes, it's in our upper atmosphere, and we've had a hole in our ozone layer for a long time. Ozone is O3, so it's an oxygen molecule of three. Oxygens, and that tends to be really unstable. So it does have a short half-life, but what we need to know about it is it's kind of like 4 or 5 fold the oxidative strength of regular O2. So that means it reacts with various materials, plastics and rubbers, um, not silicone, but it does react with some of the materials that would say be in a valve system or part of a strap system. So I really, it's for this reason we recommend against it. I think it's out there and people will use it, but they probably don't realize it's actually going to degrade your mask system faster than if you would go with something like UV. So UV is going to be the better choice there. There's actually this really funny story of a doctor we know who he bought an ozone sauna and started taking 4 or 5 ozone saunas a week. And the way ozone saunas work is you jump inside and your head sticks out, but ozone absorbs through your skin, and that's beneficial. Our body actually likes to do that. There's some neat science and neat benefits there. You can also use a LiveO2 system along with an ozone sauna to get this nice ozone and oxygen treatment. But I have to make it clear, you're not breathing the ozone, you're getting it in contact with your skin. And you know, this is the benefit of living in a tropical environment where you can run around with a swimsuit, is you get a whole lot more exposure on your skin, not only of sunlight but of ozone. Your skin is permeable basically. But to finish up this story about this doctor, after a couple months, his underwear, the rubber elastic in it had was completely shot. You know, so so it basically looked like he had joined, you know, the ultimate wedgie club. And his wife had to bring this to his attention because she thought he was having an affair and somebody was, you know, kind of manhandling him and not getting his underwear off him fast enough. And so they had to have a heart to heart and go shopping for a whole new set of
There's a
underwear after a couple
scientific
months.
explanation behind this,
Right.
I promise.
He had to go to the internet and figure out, you know, prove to his wife, hey, look, you know, it's the ozone that's been tearing up the waistband in my underwear. So in that sense, it's unstable. It's a strong oxidant. It's going to react with some of the delicate valve components in a mask system. It's going to burn them up, cause them to crack or become rigid. And that's where they lose function. So it's why we don't like ozone. And, you know, when we hear about it in the news, in our atmospheric air, we hear about it because it can aggravate asthma and other respiratory conditions, even in small concentrations. You know, it's for all these reasons that we want our listeners to know ozone's not something you should be breathing. It does cause damage to the lungs. It's great in saunas, but it's the type of thing you want to have a well ventilated area before you start producing ozone inside. You can tolerate a tiny bit of it in your breathing air, but before it becomes a respiratory irritant.
We've covered a lot of the big topics, so design, cleanliness, how you manage it, is there anything that we want to wrap up with? Mike, do you want to talk any more about the premium mass design, or how users can upgrade maybe?
Sure. I know everyone's going to enjoy and just, love this new mass system. It's just a better fit, just, fit, form, function, all that. It's a better deal. And, when I designed it and made it and was looking and researching, I designed it with love. And you got to realize that I'm a daily user. So is my wife. So are my 3 kids. So is a couple of my neighbors, which if you're listening, come over anytime you want. I don't mind at all.
That's awesome.
And, my family has a business with it. My brother, has several systems set up, and then he has, people come in throughout the day that he runs through the system. And it's just, like I said, built it out of love. So, and it's easy to upgrade. I know there's a price point to it, and, it just kind of has to be that way. But when you consider the length of how long a life it's going to have for you, compared to the standard mask, and just when you consider everything, it's to me, it's a cheaper alternative, or a less expensive alternative than going with the standard mask.
In creating the valve system too, you have to keep safety in mind and as a feature. So we don't ever want anybody on one of our systems as a participant to not be able to breathe no matter what. So in this design, Mike was running through various versions of it, and we kind of had to tease out where we could get the intake and the exhalation valves to fail, so we could have a safety mechanism on them. And so we could build our bracket to the correct diameter and support, so that it'll provide all the normal use function that we want. But as soon as enough vacuum or restriction was created in the system, those valves would pop inward and you would still be able to breathe off of them. Air would still pass through. So you're not moving into a point where the air would be completely shut off for you. There's a fail safe in there.
Yeah, Tom. Yeah, consumers need to know about this, because the same green, CPAP valve that I mentioned earlier, it has safety issues. It doesn't allow the valve to collapse and get airflow in an unplanned air shortage situation. And, and this becomes really bad, if there's no redundancy built into the system, like we have in our valve and reservoir. A safe system is one that you can always get a breath from no matter what. So we worked out, the pressure that it would take to collapse the septa, and created a bracket, and you just did all this work to allow this safety function to be added, to the normal function of our valve. So you have to design for the absolute worst case scenario, and that's what we did. We've done that, and we would never want anyone to pass out, because there's sudden loss of airflow. With airflow comes a complete halt, and it just wouldn't be a good situation.
Yeah, this is serious. Stoppage of the airflow very suddenly, especially during workout, is something your body is not really designed to experience. So we want to avoid that at all cost. It probably could cause something like a pulmonary contusion or bruising of the lung tissues. Your lungs are like any other tissue in your body. If you stress them enough, they'll bruise. They're probably a little bit more delicate than other tissues, just because they're internal, but they're also our interface between the external world. So enclosed in us, but still open. So worst case scenario, if someone were to pass out and cannot get air, that would be a super bad consequence. So we're, not having considered that in building a system would be just really negligent of the number one concern is safety.
Yeah, safety features, Tom. That's something we don't talk about a whole lot, but you have to have them, to cover all the bases, and all events. And that's why we built them into this, the LiveO2 system, for a good reason. We have to find a balance, to engineer around having the function, at 2 or 3 levels, and that redundancy, like I said, we've got redundancy in the valve, we've got redundancy in the reservoir, and we got built-in, redundancies into the valve itself. So I appreciate you letting me, take the time to share them here with you, Tom. And do we want to talk about price here?
Yeah, we're I think rounding the clubhouse turn here, so price is appropriate to get into. What we looked for was building the best mask, the best training mask and valve on the market, and doing that in a way that this is clinical grade. And I don't think anybody's going to be able to wear this out, but we're coming in at less than half the price of what you would be able to buy this mask for on the market. So we're really happy that it's coming in at $240. And, this is what I feel is a really great value.
Yeah, the typical value, of a mask, and valve assembly, when I got to looking, it was crazy. It was, $500. And I'm thinking that's just not practical. So I'm really happy, for what we finally discovered and put together. They only come in, around $240. It's way much less than other kits that are out there, and it's going to perform even better. The inner diameter that we expect is going to be the best inner diameter on the market. I also mentioned we have the ability to rebuild the valve. If something ever happens to it and you don't think it's functioning properly, you just send it in. I think we've settled on a $25 rebuild fee where you send it in and, we'll refurbish it and send it back out. I don't think we're going to get very many of those, just, from the testing that we've done and the way that it's engineered. But that's just kind of our thought for now. And then just keep a couple feature sets, in the back pocket to be released in the future podcasts. We can continue to develop, what we're going to call add-ons at this point to the LiveO2 system. I'm just excited for all this stuff to come out.
Oh man, add-ons.
There we go.
I haven't heard of this, so I'm super excited about this too. I can't imagine what y'all have been cooking up. I know that Tom said they basically pass you a sketch and say build it. So I guess we'll see what the team has been sketching. Well, thanks guys. I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. I feel like we've covered the bases on the premium mask. I will paste a link below for you guys that would like to reach out about upgrading your mask, or just if you'd like to speak to someone about it and see, if it would be the right choice for you. I know that we've had some people express that the regular masks don't have a nice fit. So that's one option that I feel like if you feel like your mask doesn't fit, that you could potentially upgrade. So I'll paste a link below where you guys can get a hold of us. And as a little twist in wrapping up, I know that we usually ask our guest about their prescription for health, but Mike, we already asked you, so we're not going to ask you again.
Shucks, I was ready for it.
So Tom, that brings you to the table. I would be super interested to hear what your prescription for health is.
All right. This is a surprise ending for our listeners here. Okay. There are some, this is always changing for me, but maybe the one consistent thing, and I'll just equate it to, you got to wake up on the right side of bed every day. And some of the experiences, I won't go into sharing them in detail, but you realize through life that if you label things only as versions of good, you tend to be a whole lot more positive. And the same is true for love. So this waking up on the right side of the bed means that, you're going to be on the side of the world that wants to create more love and is going to view things as good, even if they are horrible. You can find some good in them. And that, it allows you to love yourself and love the other folks, and then do what you need to do in the world. And a lot of that comes into purpose. Now, the next piece is really gets into, you got to know where you are. The recommendations or advice drastically differ between, let's say, 18-year-olds and 78-year-olds. So you got to know where you are. And then even between 78-year-olds, you have a whole scale of really healthy folks and folks that are not as healthy. They have a really low work capacity. So you have to really dial it in and know where somebody is, and that's a good thing to know for yourself. You need to know where you are, and then you need to know how to nourish that. In Chinese medicine, you have kind of what's called the 5 substances, and it's a good way to look at how to nourish your body. But you have qi in Chinese medicine, which is really translates to energy, but is technically translated into respiration as the start of how we produce our energy. You've got your blood. Blood is your life force in your body, and you have the fluids of your body. And this is kind of, think of this as your transport mechanisms. And then you have your essence, and this is kind of like your constitution, but it's also kind of like that extra part of you, that's outside your physical body. And sometimes you feel when somebody walks in the room, you'll kind of turn your head. That's kind of their essence walking in. And then there's the spirit, and I believe the spirit really is us, and we get to carry the spirit around in kind of a flesh and bones body. But we take those 5 things, and when we figure out how to nourish them, we can do a lot of good for the body. If we don't have a whole lot of energy, then maybe breathing and doing some moderate exercise is a really good thing. If we don't have our blood built up, then we have to look at our diet and figure out how we're going to build our blood so we have more resources to have functionality and heal our body. So you go through each one of those things and figure out how to nourish yourself. Sometimes it's rest, sometimes it's activity, sometimes it's just figuring out who you are and letting that shine through. And usually when your physical body feels better, it's a lot easier to let your spirit shine through, and that's kind of your gift to the world.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Tom. I feel like our users and our audience really appreciates your perspective, because you do bring this sort of Eastern mindset to a very Western mentality that a lot of us have. So it's always refreshing to get a little bit more perspective. So thanks for sharing that. And guys, I guess that wraps it up for today. If you have any questions about the premium mask, again, we'll throw up a link so you guys can contact us. You can always just dial us directly, our numbers on our website. So it's pretty easy to find. And yeah, thanks for explaining everything, Mike. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the LiveO2 podcast. If you like our show and want to know more, check out our website, LiveO2.com. That's live, the letter O as in oxygen, and the number 2.com. You can subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. If you like our show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Join us next time as we continue to examine how you too can create abundant health.
Viewpoints expressed in this podcast are not made by medical professionals, nor should any part of this podcast be interpreted as medical advice. LiveO2 products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Consult with your physician before beginning any exercise program. LiveO2 statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. For any suspected or known illness or health concern, always consult with your physician or healthcare provider prior to the purchase or use of any product. LiveO2 has attempted to present information from the literature, books, and other references, as well as information about our products as accurately as possible, but you should be aware that the Food and Drug Administration has not approved or evaluated any of the information contained in our literature or on our site. Any literature reference or direct link to a specific product is for your information or convenience and may not be construed as an enticement to purchase, and further is not intended or implied to be used in the mitigation, diagnosis, treatment, cure, or prevention of any disease.